What's up, everybody? This is Greg with Marathon Music Gym. I'm back for Module 2. Glad that you're here to join us. Today we're going to be getting into a very prevalent topic when it comes to music theory, and that is the chords. When I say the chords, I'm talking about a pretty endless list of combinations of notes. But a chord, by definition, is any three notes that have some sort of relationship with one another. So, of course, I hesitate to say any three notes, of course, because I don't think I could argue that these three notes necessarily make a chord. There is some rhyme and reason to how chords are built, and the ones that sound nice when they're played back to back have an actual relationship to each other that comes from what you've already learned, hopefully, from Module 1, which is your major scale. So we're going to break down some pretty basic chords today. And I'm going to spend most of the time actually kind of talking a lot about the character of a handful of these chords, which is to say kind of some flavors of chords that you'll come across, the most common ones, I think. And in the next video, we're going to start deriving these chords from the scale. So you'll be able to see how the C major scale gives you a family of chords. You end up with a bundle of chords that sound pretty good when you play them together. So we're going to start really simply today. If you recall from our last video, hopefully you've got a sense of your note names at this point. You might remember that our third white note here in this particular grouping is A, and from there we can just label everything according to the alphabet, and then it just starts right back over at A, right? So we're going to look specifically at three of these notes this time. So if you recall, last time we looked at this grouping here from C to C, all 7 of those notes, or I suppose 8 of those notes once you get up to the octave, right? And we said that this is the C major scale. So scale, as you can see, is clearly a handful of notes, right? It's not just a single note. It's not just 2 notes, which we would call an interval. Again, you may recall from the last module. The scale gives us a particular flavor, and this flavor is major. It's going to sound like this. And I'd say that you can argue that this is a pretty happy sound, as far as happy and sad sound, anyway. Pretty abstract idea, clearly. We are going to look very simply at what we're going to call the C major chord. So as I said, a chord by definition has to be at least 3 notes. And the 3 notes we're going to look at are C, E, and G. So let me play that for you. So if we're going to relate this to language, say, whereas in the English language we have 26 letters, and each of those letters can be combined in a number of ways to make words, and then those words can be combined to make sentences, and you get deeper levels of meaning as you go up. I'd say the chord is very much the word of this musical language. This is where you start getting chunks of information that have quality, that actually have something you can say about them. And in this particular chord, I called it a C major chord, and that is related to this major scale idea as well. Let me get you a different color here. So this is the C major chord. And this is built, as you can see, from the notes C, E, and G. Now, what is major about it? Has a lot to do with how it's built, and that is something we're going to touch on more in the next video. But I want to play you then the sort of the dichotomy here between major and minor, which is going to be this duality that we come across quite a lot. If this is your major chord, the minor version of this chord, the C minor chord, is going to take that E right there and flat it. So this is now an E flat. And I'd say that it stands to reason that this sounds a lot sadder. This quality is a lot more dark, a lot more dreary, perhaps. So there's this relationship between major and minor that we're going to come across quite a lot. So if that is my C major chord, my C minor chord, and you'll see very often the convention is to have minor written in lowercase. I tend to write in a lot of all caps, so this might you might not necessarily see this always, but we'll see in notation when you have shorthand for these chords, you're going to see minor in lowercase quite often. So C minor chord is C, E flat, and G. So let me get some consistency in my colors here. So this was C, E, and G, and C minor, C, E flat, and G. So obviously those two outer notes, the C and the G, stick. Those are consistent between the major and minor chord, at least as far as C goes. I've got a droopy mic here. But these two flavors are really the things I want to drive home today, because we're going to eventually start talking about ear training. And this is something you can do already if you're listening to music as you go through these videos. You ought to be able to start picking out some of these flavors. So I could play you a few random chords here. Say something like that. And so whether or not you knew the notes that made it up, you could probably say pretty confidently that this sounds happy. Because if I played you that particular version of this chord, hopefully you could see where that sounds sad. So this happy-sad dichotomy, this major and minor dichotomy, is that, again, this duality we're going to run into quite a lot. I'll play you a few more of these. So would you say this sounds happy or sad? As opposed to maybe this one. So at first there I played you a G minor chord, and then I played you the major version of that chord. Let's do a couple more of these. And this would be the other version. So you may hear this now, that this first one is a major chord, and that is the minor version of that chord. So the aural qualities of these things, which is to say that the way that they sound, the kind of flavor that they give your ear, is an important part of picking these things out when it comes to ear training, when it comes to listening to something off the radio and trying to figure out what it is if you're trying to play it.